State? It's possible. How about that, huh? Seth, welcome. Welcome, Seth. Thank you. Oh, we're going to call the meeting to order. It's now 5 o'clock. Let's do the regular format on that stuff. Welcome all visitors and welcome any public comment that is maybe unrelated to our agenda item.
Jason Duback, Searsburg, Vermont. Come to this board on multiple times trying for them to get involved in repairing their own self-induced issues with the town of Wilmington. I've been denied at every turn. I've been told I don't matter. I've been told it doesn't affect me, that I don't belong. Here's my lease. If anybody would like to take a look at it, it's paid for the next 2 years and it's in my business name. What I found funny is I just recently ordered a machine that's getting delivered the end of March, and I have the sales slip for it, and I have to pay the sales tax rate. It's a $6,000 machine. I have to pay $3,600, but I also have to pay the city rate. And the city rate is the 1% rate. The 1% that 50 grand went to the roof on the trailer building place. So that gives me equal say. That gives me equal stand.
Gives you nothing. 1%. Why would you ever do that?
It's not that I do that. It's that I have.
You would have your machine delivered to your home in Searsburg where there is no 1%. Jason, come on. You really.
Once again, so you like to hear your own voice, and you're wrong. Well, and I can assess that, and I called them back and said, I don't live in Wilmington.
You don't live in Wilmington.
I don't. I never said I did, but I'm paying taxes in Wilmington, and I have an equal voice to everybody. And if you're embarrassed because the big dogs are here tonight, so be it. I've come meeting after meeting and tried to I want to be on the agenda for the issues I faced with your last zoning administrator that was harassment.
We can't do anything with your zoning. Only zoning can change zoning. Okay.
I'm not asking to change zoning.
If you want to have a zoning question,
it's not a zoning question.
You may hire an attorney and you may proceed.
I still have 5 months to hire an attorney. I'm well aware of my rights. I'm looking forward to it. In actuality, you think I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking on record to the judge that's ultimately going to hear all of this.
Oh, good, good.
So when you cost taxpayers money, are you going to resign?
Cost them what kind of money? How am I costing them money?
You were just telling me I can go to court. That would cost money to the town.
But you may go to court. Your issues seem to be legal. It has nothing to do with
it. It doesn't seem to be legal. It seems to be fairness. You guys painted the town with illegal signs that you don't even have a permit for.
Oh, yeah. And we thank you for calling the state and turning us in. We're happy with that.
Well, that's the same rules that you enforce on other people.
We're done. We have a longer agenda here tonight. We have people that.
I know. I've held up a 13-minute meeting once before.
Yeah.
You ought to be ashamed of yourselves.
Yeah. Goodbye.
I'll see you.
All right, Scott, any changes to the agenda?
No.
All right. So let's get started. We're here to have a discussion tonight about a proposed bill, S-255, which would create, I guess, is this something to be overseen by the sheriff's department?
Would you like me to take
why don't you get up and tell us what's happening?
Good evening. Thank you for taking your time. Sorry if I moved that there. For the record, my name is Mark Anderson. I am the sheriff of Windham County. I believe this actually might be my first time before this select board, so just want to say.
Yeah, you've never been here.
Thank you.
I will tell you that.
For your time.
Okay.
Certainly, if you ever want me to come, I'm happy to do so, but you receive services from the town of Wilmington's police department, as I'm sure you're aware, and we don't see any need to change that. So let's talk about S-255. What's it do? What's it not do? All the towns around you don't receive services from Wilmington Police Department as a general matter of fact. There might be relationships your town enters into with towns for mutual aid. You might contract with another municipality to assist them with services, but it is the town of Wilmington issue to address. Many towns in Windham County, 15 to be specific, contract with my office for supplemental law enforcement services. Why do they contract for services? I assume for many of the same reasons the town of Wilmington has a police department. It's to get services that they're not receiving from the state. State police receive about $110 million per year to provide all the policing services that they render. What they're required to do or not, I leave that to them to discuss with you and what impacts that have on your town. What I find with my communities, again, the 15 towns in Windham County that contract with me, it's to do more than what they're currently getting. What they generally run into is that while they have the authority to create a police department, they can't afford to. So what S255 is an opportunity for towns to be able to improve the method for which they receive policing services. What it would do is take the existing funding that those towns raise and use that to fundamentally pay for services through a variety of eliminations of bureaucracy fundamentally. What it would not impact is the town of Wilmington if the town of Wilmington said they don't want to do anything with it or have anything to do with it. So I did speak with some members of your community who were concerned about taxes. This doesn't affect the town of Wilmington if the town of Wilmington said it did not want to participate. By its default nature.
Can we get that in writing?
It's in the bill.
Okay, I didn't see it in the bill, that's all. Okay. And
I'm happy to circulate it to the board so you can have it as part of your record. But the intent of it is a voluntary thing. I'll use Act 46 as an example of something in recent memory that a lot of towns have seen. Nobody likes being forced into anything. And if I want something to be successful, well, forcing people to do it doesn't work. So what we're trying to do is create a voluntary system that opts in. My towns do want this. We have support. I said a contract with 15. I have support from 17 towns to do this work. We did not ask for support specifically from towns with police departments because we're not trying to solve your problem. This hasn't. It's not to say we're ignoring the town. It's that we're trying to do for these communities what your police department does for you. It's not to say we have all the solutions to all the problems. In fact, it wasn't intended to do those things. What it is intended to do is a very narrow effort to improve certain things around governance that we could then use as a tool for future change if it worked. And if it failed, it's a pilot project that ends after 5 years. If it failed even before we got to 5 years, there's still opportunities for that to even end as well. So this is kind of a low risk, low stake, low problem bill that is piloted in Windham County based on an initiative we've been working on for about 3.5 years with towns, their town select boards, administrators, town managers. A lot of the language in the bill is actually from the towns themselves. We've also been working with the League of Cities and Towns, with the state of Vermont, with the various folks. I do want to also submit an apology publicly to your senators. I made a mistake. I thought that you were part of the Windham County Senate District. I never talked to the Bennington County Senate District regarding this bill because I didn't think it was going to affect them. So I learned on Friday that it did in fact affect them, and we've since been communicating. So I do want to commend their involvement in the last 72 hours to talk about what this is. I know that they're here today. We have had at least some initial conversations, but at the end of the day, that's what we're up to. That's why we're doing it. I'm happy to take questions from you or others if you'd like, but I'm here as a resource. I know that you didn't call this meeting for me, but I can probably at least set the framework of what we're trying to do.
Gentlemen, Cliff?
Thanks. I'm thankful board to.
Hey, you have to come up to the mic here.
There's enough room for it. There's enough room for it.
We have extra microphones here to see.
So thank you for setting up this meeting. And I had a great talk with Mark yesterday, and it was a good opportunity to give him where I'm coming from with this. And I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that his authenticity as a law enforcement officer to do the right thing for the public. Where we differ primarily and functionally is why this meeting is here today, because the burden on the taxpayers that this is going to create, I think, is exacerbating an already bad situation. Marcus just said, and although it kind of counters some of the things that have been published previously, that this doesn't impact Wilmington taxpayers. In fact, it would, unless things have changed in the measure as I have copied here, because we would pay the tax, but then we would get it back from the state. Now, Mark Cassini thinks that might have been changed. I don't know if that's true, but that is just not that's more of a semantic thing. To me, this is a fundamental change that we need to recognize. It's a huge deviation from longstanding traditions where the local communities that want local law enforcement from the Windham County Sheriff's Department basically contract directly with them. There's no better arrangement than that. And I say that because that is the communication that Mark needs as his department to what exactly he provides. This does not do that. This measure actually has Mark and a budget that Mark would create approved by the council that this establishes. And that council would establish a budget based on what Mark might think he might need. There are a couple of wide open things. How many towns are going to jump onto the opportunity to become a member of this council? He has no idea. It's a shot in the dark. Some of them probably will, because without their coverage, you'll have no police other than maybe a constable. But to me, that's a disconnect. And it's not unlike the disconnect we have already with Act 60. We have this governance from on high, this funding mechanism from on high that rarely gets to really hear what's going on with boots on the ground. And that's the disconnect we don't need to make even greater. The burden this puts on the taxpayers is just, to me, beyond pale. I think the last thing we need to be as a state would be thinking, whether it be Mark or whether it be the Windham Regional Commission, anyone in that category of governance or providing assistance on a county level, should we be talking about adding on to the property tax burden for their purpose of funding. Now, I know we already contribute to the court system, right? We pay an assessment that's based on.
We most certainly do. Yes, we do.
Yeah, and we contribute, and I think it's right around $500,000 or something like that a year that goes toward funding your department in general from a $1 million budget that I think is what the court has to deal with, or the operational management of the court system, which trickles down to you guys. This would expand that greatly and basically deviate from, as he's explained, from that longstanding tradition. I think it opens up a level of exposure, because this just to me is so much like what we heard 30 some years ago when we were told that 11 gold towns, through the vehicle we've all come to hate in communities like Wilmington called Act 60, are going to shore up all of the shortcomings of every bit of funding in the state of Vermont for educating kids. That has turned into an unmitigated disaster. We're paying more in taxes, and our schools aren't any better, if not worse, than they were. It's put a different face on the Brigham family, who sued in the court system in Vermont to gain the opportunity for the legislature to force their hand to act. And it was so patently unfair. And this is why I hold little doubt in my mind that this will turn into a tax on us no matter what. In the beginning of Act 60, here we are with Wilmington High School, and we have kids that go to Brattleboro through the Career Center and other opportunities. In the first 3 years Act 60 formed, we were sending money to Brattleboro to further their and improve their educational opportunities for their kids. And we're struggling to offer 2 languages in this one. They have advanced placement programs. They have a wonderful career center. They have a great education system down there. We can't compete with that. But to think that this is going to be any different than that, to me, is sorely misguided. We have to say that absolutely no to any kind of taxation on a county level, in addition to what we're already paying for state level, municipal level, to fund government in Vermont. And all due respect, again, I know Mark's heart's in the right place, but this does not really change, in my view, from what I've read, his effectiveness as a law department. I think he may see coverage things that might change, but I see even more overlap, because then if you call 911 now, if the 911 operator is on the ball, they're going to know exactly who in the state of Vermont, what towns are covered by Mark's department, Bennington County Sheriff Department, state police, or a municipal. They're going to know. And I don't see that. I don't see that the reason for this can be tied to that and improving that in any way. And I think most of the people that are here today, holiday, kind of hard to get everybody here, but I'm glad to see some folks came. But I think that the groundswell of people who feel that property taxes are already too high is not indicative of what we have for turnout here today, personally. Trying to think.
And just to conclude, Mark, just so that you know, when Act 60 was invoked and we started building it out back in fiscal year 99, we finally closed it out. Mr. Bongartz assures me there's no Act 60 anymore. We haven't seen a big drop in taxes. But from that to fiscal year 2025, we, the little town of Wilmington, paid in $129,855,442. So putting that in perspective, that's why Cliff gets so concerned about additional tax. And we're already seeing people starting to leave the state again. I mean, that's a given. We've seen that all over. We're trying to do whatever we can to entice people to come, establish and stay. And we just didn't need another tax burden. I think that's what he's talking about.
And I totally appreciate all that. In fact, I'm born and raised here in Vermont. I've lived with the taxes. My tax rate is twice of Wilmington, and that's by choice. I live in a town I choose to live in with a tax rate. I don't pay the amount of taxes Cliff pays. I do not. My rate's higher, but that's more of what you own, and I'm young and I'm doing my thing. But at the end of the day, there's a statement to be said about what it costs to live here. And I know what it looks like to see young people my age, people younger than me, who I'm trying to employ, saying, I can't afford to live here. And I'm trying to work on some of those issues. So that's why we know that trying to raise taxes against towns, they're tapped, they're struggling for it. The taxpayers are struggling for it. People who can do well by themselves, they're saying, hey, enough is enough. People who can't do well by themselves are leaving. So that's a third rail to me, which is why we're not trying to come here to raise your taxes. I disagree with what Cliff says, that he believes that this will fundamentally come in and cost the town of Wilmington more money, because these are already existing costs. We're not trying to expand services. We're not trying to do anything in the content or context of the services we provide. We're trying to make a more efficient bureaucracy behind how it's funded and what that does. We're trying to look at how do towns have input into the county budget, which currently does not exist. So we're looking at some of these issues. There's an issue with the county tax. I know that you've heard things about that. You probably have thoughts about it. I don't have the ability to solve that single-handedly. But if I can start to draw some commonality around what do people get as a benefit and receive as a benefit from the services, I think we can start having some of the scarier conversations that generally break all of these regionalization efforts. This is not something I came up with on my own. This is not some brainchild that I thought up 3 years ago. It was done through process, but it's also informed by 60 years worth of studies. Those are studies that were also influenced by 60 years worth of legislative initiatives that were successful or failed. So I do not think that this is going to be one of those things. I also, Cliff mentioned that I don't know how many towns. I have 15 towns on board right now. What I don't have is 15 towns that have sat down together and hashed out a budget together and said, this is how it will impact me. But it's those towns working together if they so chose. It could be 5 towns that say, we like this idea. It could be 15 towns that had select boards 3 years ago that said, we're on board. And 3 years later, they say, we have different initiatives. Maybe we love the idea, but we don't have the bandwidth or the energy, which is what I commonly hear, is that towns don't have the bandwidth to work on things. My department recently accepted a $1.1 million grant that benefits Wilmington itself without any cost to you, your taxpayers directly. Obviously, we all pay taxes. It's a federal grant. So somewhere along the line, sure, you can draw taxes that were paid. But at the end of the day, this is $1.1 million that benefits the workforce. It benefits the viability of homes here in Wilmington built before the 70s. And what it does is lead hazard capacity building. We're teaching contractors how to work with lead in properties. Why am I telling you all of this? Because right now we don't have towns that have the capacity to apply for this, generally speaking. There's 23 towns in Windham County. They were approached. I won't say every single one was approached because it was an initiative before I joined on, that were saying, we love the idea, but we don't have a way to do it. My department's an eligible entity, and we applied for it because we know towns don't have the capacity to do this. We said, how do we help? How do we get people living here? How do we make changing a home, improving windows, improving doors affordable? We're looking at ways to help the common working person who lives and works here in Vermont.
You have a division called Sevka these days, do you?
I've heard of Sevka, but I do not have Sevka. We actually talked to Sevka about seeing if they'd want to take the grant before we applied for it, and it's a separate program, but in line with the work that they do. It's also in line with the Efficiency Vermont work. So if you're familiar with either of those programs, similar idea. So we're looking at ways to help Vermonters here, because as a Vermonter, I mean, it's hard. As an employer, it's hard. And we're trying to do the best that we can. It's also hard when I have to explain to a person, we're not coming to the problem where you need law enforcement because your town didn't pay us. Your town didn't want to contract with us. Or we've spent the budget this month. But those are conversations we have today, and those are conversations your neighbors are talking about right now. And so really what this bill is to do is to help your neighbors, but not cost you a thing.
Go ahead.
Well, there's a couple of angles to this that I disagreed with Mark about. One of which is I'm not quite sure what the word would be to describe it, but basically when someone does not qualify for income sensitivity, they pay not only their own property tax, but they pay a share of others.
Correct.
So if this were to be placed, as I understand the measure today, and I don't really want to get into the devil with the details because I don't like the devil, period. But the devil in the details in this measure is that if that comes back to us, and you have to be one of those people that paid more property taxes than you actually owed because you qualified to be one of those more generous people, when the money comes back to the town, that person loses out again. Because they're not going to see that income sensitivity come back to them. It's going to be across the board reduction in our budget by a line item that says you got back from the state of Vermont this money that you paid into the Windham County Sheriff's Department, did not have to have because you have your own police department. So therefore we're giving you back. So all the people that qualified to be more than generous with their own taxes plus somebody else's, they're never going to see any of that money. So it's just another bit of unfairness. I point out that you really have to think about this and the very complex and complicated property tax system that we have in Vermont. It is so ridiculously complicated that I kind of admire that he's trying to plow through that alone just to get to where it is here. But I do not see a change in law enforcement to me, and this is no offense to your department or Mark, but that this does. I don't see that this fixes anything. All I see is this changes the faces on which the people that are contributing to him currently. He's currently being paid by people directly that he contracts for. This changes that. Now, he may say that that's an exposure that he doesn't believe is going to take place. I'm sorry. Today's not my birthday and I wasn't born yesterday. I believe that this is not the case. I think Act 60 is a classic example of exactly the opposite, that we will wind up having to contribute because just like the theory before was, well, you know what, your neighbors need your help. You know, all boats rise when we all help each other, and we do. I told Mark about an instance where I saw our finest police department in Marlboro investigating an accident. When I drove by the barracks in West Pratt, there were 7 cruisers in the parking lot, and I went and asked the sergeant, I said, do you mind telling me why there's a Wilmington police officer investigating an accident in Marlboro when you got 7 cruisers out there? And you know what he said to me? He said, they're not all running. They're not all running? I count 6 officers in here, sir. And you tell me you can't send somebody to Marlboro to investigate an accident on Route 9? We have to send somebody from Wilmington? Now, I got no problem helping our neighbors, but that, I was still in the budget committee then. I just about came unglued because I'm sorry, that's not right. We can help Marlboro, we can help when we do, and we can help Searsburg, and we do. And all those other areas that Mark's talking about, Jacksonville, Whitingham, we help them a couple of things. I know we do. And that's great. Matt runs a great department. And God bless him for all the things that we do to share those resources we're fortunate enough to be able to pay for. But I think this proposal, if anything, it might make some towns that want to commit to this commission say, well, you know, how much is Mark going to have to charge me based on a budget that he needs compared to how much it's going to cost us to have our own department? And then the better resources that are more immediately available because the people responsible to the town, he doesn't have to work through Mark and his agency.
So one thing I just want to clarify, and I don't blame Cliff for any reason he has the perception of what he just represented, because that's where we started. This has been a process that's been worked out. And so one of the things that we said is we know that we have to return money to towns, which is because if we're going to use an existing system, which is what we're trying to do to eliminate the need to find how do we audit, how do we do various bookkeeping measures that are just necessary, things that if you're responsible for government, you understand we have to do the things and they're not They're not anything spectacular, but they do cost money and they do take time. So we wanted to use an existing process. That's why we want to use the county tax. We said we know we need to reverse the money to towns. In my conversation with Cliff, I didn't think about the income sensitivity, but the reality is we don't have to talk about that today. It's an issue foregone because what we were able to do after we got through the final steps of the public process, after we heard back from a variety of stakeholders and participants, we're able to work with an attorney to say, this is viable. How do we do the thing we're trying to do, which is not raise taxes against people who aren't participating in the system? And they came up with this other structure, which is what is in the bill. So I do not see this as impactful to the towns. It was certainly part of a conversation that was occurring as recent as July and September. But at the end of the day, we have changed it. And so the original draft bill does not even contemplate what Cliff is concerned about with the differences of how towns are taxed at various levels, because your town will just not see it.
So you're saying we wouldn't be taxed at all? You're saying we would not send any money into this?
Not a nickel.
Money.
I'd say a penny, but I think we got rid of this.
And like Tom said, could we get a hand on the Bible solemn oath?
Well, you know,
in writing.
Cliff is talking about Act 60. Unfortunately, those of us who are older, we all went through Act 60, and it actually killed us. It killed us. And we really never recovered from Act 60. And that's why I was so happy when we met with Mr. Blunkin and Mr. Bongartz here last fall. They told us Act 60 was now completely gone. We're going back to the foundation program, I think, that we had back in the 70s. And that's the problem with being here too long, okay? That's what happens. But we get very worried about this. I mean, and we'll say that because I think when this first went into effect, I think the town of Searsburg had 65 people, and they were considered a gold town, if you recall. And I'm going, I couldn't believe that. I mean, it was just so unfair, and nobody ever seemed to care. We had another gentleman. Actually, we had a senior gentleman from Bennington who really took over the chops here. Dick Shears, and Dick got out of here just, I think it was in Dover, I think it was. He got out of here with his life, I think. That's how.
You make a good point. It makes me think of something I didn't touch on that I did want to mention. It has to do with the income sensitivity, but I think if you really look long and hard at the capability of people in the towns that Mark serves, and this is not to throw in the economic, fireball at anybody as to their economic status, but the economic viability for people to pay in excess of what they actually owe in taxes in Wilmington and Dover is going to be quite unlike it is in Halifax, quite unlike what it is in Whitingham. Those people don't have the kinds of homes that generate the kind of money that Act 60, whatever,
right,
continues to fund. So my point being is that if that's the case, where is that other money going to come from? Because if there are people on not only income sensitivity, but we don't have the actual wherewithal to assess properties high enough to be able to pay for Mark's services under this commission arrangement, and he's got a budget he's got to live with, and he's got to provide these services, and they're saying our taxes are going to go up so much because we don't have other people's money to spend.
So there's an interesting fact here, and it requires me to call it out. I know I look like a police officer. I'm wearing a uniform. I have a badge, name tag, a firearm, handcuffs. Like, it's all the things that we envision. I drove here in a car that has blue lights and a siren, like law enforcement. There's not a portion of Title 24, Title 20, Title 13, any Vermont law that says the sheriff shall do law enforcement. I have no obligation to do any of the things that Cliff just mentioned. I have to serve papers.
But you do anyway.
And so I'll come to that. I have to serve papers. So if somebody doesn't pay their credit card, you need to evict. Landlord needs to evict a person from a home. We do those things. That's my job. I have to transport prisoners. That's my job. Those are the things that we receive money for, that is budgeted for, and it works. The thing I don't have to do is law enforcement. It's what my communities want. So we provide a supplemental service. It's not to say I have to do anything. The state police are the default police force for the state of Vermont. They have been talking about what their needs and abilities are, what they're capable of doing, what they have staffing to do. Like, this is an ongoing conversation around the state. So what I'm trying to do, I disagree that this bill doesn't solve anything. In fact, it starts to answer a number of issues around how do we start looking at staffing within agencies as we start to see less employees? How do we start looking at law enforcement? The Vermont Futures Project starts to look at 2030 as a point of where we will have less people working than we will retire. I believe Windham County is going to represent approximately 40% of people under the age of 55. So if we don't have law enforcement officers to do this work, where are they coming from? What happens when Chief Morano or I are saying we're hiring and no one's applying? We're forecasting some of the issues, and we're looking at ways that we can share resources, which is exactly what this bill is working to do before we get to 2030 and start realizing we should have worked on that in 2026. So I'm here today to say, let's work on 2026, because we're also talking about fixing some other things. How do we work with each other as towns in a unified board, which is what this does. This bill is a very limited pilot project. It only allows us to do what the bill allows us to do, which is law enforcement. We're not trying to solve education, a variety of other things that have come up. And I'm happy to talk about those, except I know you have a lot of people here who might also want to talk. But the point is that we also want to talk about how do we start working through some of the problems, all of which have been the theme of these studies that I've quoted. There's been about half dozen to a dozen of them over the last 60 years. But we just have not been successful. We have intermunicipal agreements where those have failed. That's an issue Vermont cities and towns worked very hard on. Windham Regional Planning Commission worked very hard to get legislation for. They've fallen apart. We have a variety of relationships with towns where issues with their insurance. Who's responsible when you are sharing services? It falls apart. We keep seeing these different things that fall apart. We have a variety of intermunicipal governing organizations, communication union districts, stormwater, wastewater. All of these are systems that have been designed, and what we keep seeing is they don't get used. What the words were put into the law book said they could do, they're not being used because people get into it and they start realizing it falls apart. It falls apart for liability. It falls apart for taxes. It falls apart for people not being able to get together and work together. We know those things. I don't know that I'm the person to solve half of those problems. I'm the sheriff. I understand law enforcement. I understand how to serve papers, transport prisoners, move people across the country who need to serve time in Vermont prisons or go see the judge. There's a lot of things I can be an expert on, but some of the things that we need to work on are community driven and governance driven. So this bill does start as a small piece around governance, but this is going to be future work. We know it has to. What we're looking to do is answer a whole host of questions and do it in a very limited way that does not offend the taxpayer and doesn't offend a whole lot of other interests, but most of you probably won't care about those interests for the sake of this meeting.
You want to grab that at the end, Barker? Is it on?
No.
If you turn it on. Yeah, good. You're good to go. Good to go.
Okay, Barker Willard, I have three questions for you. First, out of all this, does your population change your input costs?
So one of the structures we're looking at doing, currently the county tax uses a grand list formula. Again, I'm not here to change the county tax or talk about ways to improve how the county works. There's frustrations there. I'm not the guy.
So the larger the grand list, the more you're going to contribute.
Which is the model of the grand list tax, which is what most towns as well as the county use. What this would be doing is taking the cost of the service. I say on the expense side of the column. The cost of the service, we divide it per capita across towns that are members. So if it costs round numbers, I'm making things up because it's really up to the governing council to decide what the numbers are. It's not that I get a magic wand to wave and say, this is how much my budget is. Let's say it's $1 million. I think that's high,
I was
but
going to say you better use 10,000, probably go over a lot better.
$1,000. So $1 million, if that were the case, there's 15 towns, but we have anywhere from the population of 6,000 to 500. It will be $1 million divided by, it's approximately 23,000 people. And so what's that cost at $1 million? So that's the per capita model. The reason we're going per capita, I don't know why, and maybe the town manager can tell me someday later, but all the towns are saying per capita is better for towns than the grand list.
Because they take more of our money here.
Who does?
The county, based on per capita. When
Per
I want
capita
a
or
grant,
grand list?
when I want a grant, they base it on population. When we have to pay the county or anything else, it's based on the grand list.
Yeah, so
That's my
what,
point.
what we're looking to
So
do
our
is not
grand
use
list
the grand
continues
list.
to go up here as opposed to other areas of the county. Just say.
Yeah, and so that's why what this bill does, and you'll see in draft 1.1, I don't know if that's the copy that you have, Cliff, but just so you're aware, there's draft 1.1, which was just issued last week, it is per capita. So I'm going to deal with the same problem you deal with, and why town managers tell me they want per capita, I don't know, but we trusted them on that.
Definitely a lower number per se. So, how is your overall funding different than what the state police is?
So the state police are funded by the legislature through the general fund or other revenue sources. I'm not an expert on their funding, other than they have about $110 million that was appropriated last year for their operations. I have three budgets. I have a state budget that is physically, fundamentally, it's my salary, followed by two employees who their job is to provide transports. It doesn't pay for their cars or uniforms or training, their equipment, or any of the other things. They're just expected to have it. I have the county budget. The county budget pays for my building, but what it doesn't pay for is the way I explained to my insurance company. If you pick the building up and shake it out, it doesn't pay for anything that falls out. The people, the equipment, any of the furniture, it doesn't pay for that stuff. And then the third budget, and this is actually the most sizable portion of my budgets, our business. And so we operate as an independent legal entity. We enter into business arrangements with a variety of organizations, including the state of Vermont, to get revenue, which then we use to buy the equipment for my transport deputies. That buys their cars, it buys the things. And so this is an incredibly strange funding mechanism that exists nowhere else in the United States, and we have it here. So part of what I'm looking to do is go to places we have seen more common sense funding models to say we can do the same things that raises literally the same amount of money, but get rid of a lot of the minutia that actually costs us more money, more attorney's fees, more accounting fees, more auditing fees. We pay for 2 audits for the county and the sheriff. Why? They're 2 separate legal entities. Why? Because it just is.
Got some confusion stuff going on there. But that's the state of Vermont, usually totally confused the way we're seeing it now. My third part really is more a comment, and that's the whole Section 9 sunset on however this thing works out. On one, you have to get down to 1 member before they cease to terminate. That seems kind of foolish. That's would be Section 9, line 6. B, in the event of number of member municipalities being reduced to 1, the council shall be terminated.
Yeah, so
or on June 30th or 34.
There's a couple things that can happen. So number one, let's pretend we pass this tomorrow. The difference tomorrow or the next day, it's no different than today or the day before it passed. And the reason I say that is because it requires the opt-in of at least 5 towns to say, we believe this makes sense. We've done the math. We've sat down with our budgets. We've sharpened the pencils. We've done the things. Those minimum of 5 towns, but I assume will be closer to 15. Those towns would then come forward and say, this is what we want to approve. Now, let's say that over time it stops working and they say, we want out, they can get it. And so what the sunset language does is 2 things. One is it says, if Mark is wrong, which I can be, if I'm wrong and all the towns say not for us and they leave, we just return back to what it was on February 16th. And that's no change. So that's what's in Section 9 for the sunset if it gets down to just 1 town. The second part is then it is bound by time. And so as of the date that's put into the bill of the sunset date, this just ends. We do not intend this to be a long-standing thing. One concern I heard was that people believe that we will take this and try to turn it into a permanent thing. It's like, well, on one hand, if we wanted to turn it into a permanent thing, that's probably a sign of good policy, but that will still require a new law. So this would have to go through the whole legislative process all over. It would still be talking to select boards and the towns and the people to go through it, but we're going to have to go through that whole process. One of the interesting things, if you're not familiar with constructs of law, we have 2 sets. We have what's in the Vermont statutes, the green books. We have what's called session law. Session law is passed during a session, which allows certain things like pilot projects. This is in session law, and so it enables us and makes it legal for us to do the thing, but it doesn't live on past that. It will just end. So this is not changing the green books at all, Title 20, Title 24. And I made brief mention that, yes, we do law enforcement because Title 24 allows me to contract. So that's why we're allowed to do things. It's why I'm allowed to enter into this grant that really no other sheriff's department in the country's done, but it's still benefiting Windham County residents. Like, we're able to do these things because we're empowered to. And so we're trying to find out ways that we understand the subject matter experts of our business to say this will make things better. I trust when the town managers say per capita works from a funding model for these reasons, that it works. I understand what Scott just said as far as the grand list, why towns don't like that coming from the county. That also makes sense. I'm just not here to fix the county tax problem today. I'm here to say, let me talk about the thing I'm an expert on, which is the police enforcement.
So if I'm just understanding final, is that this is a federal grant that Windham County Sheriff you've applied for? No, at this point, no other county sheriffs in the state of Vermont have, or?
So I just want to separate the two issues. The federal grant we received, we're the only county, we're the only county in the state that has it there. The Vermont Housing Conservation Board also has a grant. And then the towns of Burlington and Winooski share a grant between their two towns, but those are the only three. There are hundreds of millions of dollars issued each year by the federal government to do this type of work.
Pilot program is
Not
what
for the
I'm
pilot
asking
program.
for.
That's for the lead hazard capacity building. So separate issue.
That's irrelevant. Well, it's not irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant, but
No.
for what you're asking, there's no
I'm
federal
asking
funding
just
for
for your sheriff's department. You're the only sheriff's department that has applied for this grant in all of Vermont.
this is not a grant. This is a pilot project. We worked with attorneys to craft this language to say we only want it to work here in Windham County for the purpose of answering some of these questions, some of this process. And the reason why, because we have 17 towns have said, we need to talk about this and figure this out. And this is the body of work that came out of those 17 towns across 3 years, almost 4 years now, saying, let's talk about it.
In Windham County.
In Windham County.
Thank you. I appreciate your loud speaking too, by the way.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if I could kick Cliff out of his seat and I could come up to the table.
Kick me out of my seat and I'll stand.
No,
No,
I'd rather pick on Cliff.
there's already a microphone for you, man, right there.
Okay. You can give that back to the town manager. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your opportunity. This is about the property tax. There's no question in my mind about that. There's two truths about the property tax. Number one, it is a regressive tax. It cannot, in its current structure, accommodate any citizen who has to pay it. It cannot accommodate responding to their income levels that allows them to pay that tax. So it is a regressive tax. And the other thing that people need to keep in the forefront of their minds is that Vermonters can lose their homes if they don't pay this tax. Every legislator in this room, I hope if you take no message out of this conversation, you take that message out. I also want to share something that kind of comes out of a number of things that Cliff and others said, and even some things that you have said, Sheriff. The legislature, through its general fund, has put in place an extraordinary structure that requires the actions of the legislature and the administration to stay within a predetermined budget that is subject to the expected revenues of the state. Every Vermonter should be proud of that system. It works. We balance the general fund budget every single year, no matter which political party is in power in the state. It works. There's a consequence to that, clearly an unintended consequence, and the state police are a classic example of that. They are funded out of that general fund budget. But their charter tells them they are supposed to provide policing services throughout Vermont, not just state policing services. So they are in their charters supposed to be able to deal with rural towns throughout the state of Vermont. But within that general fund budget constraints, they are held to a budget process that literally does not give them the opportunity to do that. The consequence of that is the service that's required has fallen to the county sheriffs around the state, who, as Mark pointed out, it's not part of your mandate, but it's work that needs to be done, and it's headed right for the property tax. There's no other way to pay for it. I don't think very many people understand that consequence, but every Vermonter in this room should be proud that that's in place for the general fund. Now let's come down to the property tax. So there's pressures that flow out of the actions around maintaining the state's budget through the general fund that come and have upward pressures, if not direct impacts, on the amount of property taxes people are expected to pay in this state. And for many, and the federal government, it's a little on steroids right now, but it's always been the case that they can and they do withdraw funding for programs that have been in place for a long time. Any effort to continue those programs because of this structure at the state's general fund has nowhere to go but either cut the services or head to the property tax. It's another huge thing. And all of that leads me to hope that folks understand that we are in a position with the Vermont property tax right now that must be changed structurally to deal with the ability of people to pay. County tax is a property tax, and it's actually a very opaque tax. I'm not sure how many Vermonters even are aware. I know in Wilmington, it's a line item in the Selectboard contingency budget. It's about $100,000. It's called court costs. And some of the budget from your department flows in that, but you do a lot of work with the courts, so it's not inappropriate to call it that. But have we ever had a side judge come in and tell us or our voters in this town what that expenditure was doing? None. In my 15 years on this board, I never saw that happen, and I have never heard of it happening since then. So where is the line of accountability and transparency from those that raise the need for that tax to the people who have to vote to agree to pay that tax? It does not exist in the county government. There are a number of things, in addition to the work that you're trying to do. There is a lot of talk about a potential level need for a county government. That will go right to this same opaque property tax that now is in place for, quote, county government. It's all headed for the property tax, and we're getting to a crisis point. And an example of that is to me, the hue and cry that came from the public around education was all about people's inability to pay the property tax. They weren't complaining about how much money was spent. They were complaining about their property tax. What's coming out of the legislature, as I see it, is based on the notion that decreasing spending will lower property taxes. Well, we've been there before. We had Act 46, which was supposed to do that as well. There's never been any state effort to evaluate the impact of Act 46 in terms of either spending levels or property tax control. Didn't exist. And it's not a very far course to say that what's beginning to emerge out of the legislature this year feels to me like Act 46 on steroids. Spending is not the only issue that needs to be addressed. Who is driving that spending needs to be looked at. Now, so as many of you all know, that this whole property tax issue has been my issue from my time on this board and certainly my time in the legislature. And I do get the notion, I actually get the notion, especially in smaller communities, the issues that are expected to be resolved at the local government level are getting increasingly complex. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. Do we need larger levels of government to make that happen? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know if we're going that route and the spending is coming from the property tax, the structure of that property tax need to be addressed, and it can only be addressed in the legislature. local communities can only lobby for it. They cannot change it. They cannot change it. But there's actually a little bit of good news on that front. And it is in the education property tax. The legislature did resolve for education spending, putting in place a mechanism where individuals' income sensitivity had everything to do up to a certain level, how much property tax they had to pay to support that spending. Unfortunately, for the rest of the people, I forget whether you or you may have said, everyone else who pays property taxes in the state picks up the tab for that. It's still all paid on the property tax, but at least it acknowledges a very significant part of the structure of property tax that recognizes that the ability, the income level is related to that. So we can do this. We can do this. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else? I was going to call on you one way or the other, Jeanette. You know that, okay? Because I'm certain you spurned this on it to begin. Why don't you come forward?
You have to vote to let me speak.
Oh, no. This is open.
All right, okay. Thank you.
We'll always make room for the former president of the Senate, right?
I'm not there anymore, and sometimes I'm glad and sometimes I'm not.
I'll bet you're glad here at this point. You've got a couple of gentlemen here that know that for a fact.
Yes, they do. So if I may, I would just like to make a few comments and
Sure.
Just maybe clarify some things or maybe muddy them up again. I don't know. But I was chair of Senate Government Operations for 16 years. And law enforcement is one of the issues that government operations deals with. And one of the things we did a few years ago is our committee went around the state. We went to 8 different communities and probably heard from 500 people, select board members, law enforcement officers, zoning administrators, advocates, everybody. And what we heard was that small towns need some kind of help. They're not getting the services that they need. And at that time, I don't know what it is now, but at that time, for a town to have a police force, it cost about $300 a resident to support that police force. I have no idea what it is in Wilmington or what the number is now, but that was the number a few years ago. Is that way off, Scott?
I would have taken that question earlier. I can't say right now. So remember, things are different here because our population is 2,255, but we have almost 3/4 of our homes are second homes.
Right,
So I can't tell you what the actual population here is at any one time. I can guess 10, 15,000 on a weekend, maybe. And that's just for Wilmington, not to mention Dover, which, everything travels through Wilmington on Route 9 and 100. But I would not want to guess. I can get you the number.
No, it doesn't make any difference. It was about $300 a person then, and now that was maybe 6-7 years ago. So
Yeah, I would say you may want to double that figure here at this point.
Okay, so small towns can't do that. We heard that about contracts. Contracts for the sheriff are unsustainable. That system is just unsustainable. It means that some towns are in one year, out the next year, in the next year, out the next year. So it doesn't allow him to create the staff that he needs and on an ongoing basis, because every time you need a new police officer, it takes months to recruit that person, send them to training. And then if 3 towns drop out, then he doesn't have then he has too much staff, and then they want back in the next year. So it's unsustainable. It also means that he has to go to 15 or 17 different towns every year and go to their select board meetings and ask them if they'll do it. That is kind of a waste of time. So right now, it is a property tax. That is true. Right now, I pay for the contract that we have with the sheriff through my property tax. That's the way I pay for it now. That's the way I would continue to pay for it there. But this would smooth it out a bit. I think smoothing is a word that's used in investments. When you look at your, you might be up 1 year and down 1 year and up 1 year and down 1 year, but you smooth them out. And that's what this would do. And the reason it would do that is because right now we pay, I think, about $70,000 in Putney for a contract. Dummerston pays, I believe it's $12,000. So when something happens in Putney, we have service. When something happens in Dummerston, the sheriff can't go. And their citizens don't know why he can't give them law enforcement, but it's because they're not paying for it. So my property tax, my tax might go down, theirs might go up, but that's going to be the decision of this board. This creates a board made up of one person, one select board member, not just a person from the community, but one select board member that also does their town budget, one select board member from every member town. They are the ones that will create the budget with the sheriff. That budget is then given to the county judges, and they will then assess the member towns. They won't assess Wilmington, Dover, Bellows Falls Village, or Brattleboro, because they aren't member towns, because they have their own departments. And the board will decide, this board will decide what the budget is. And if they say, we want this budget and we're willing to pay $10 a head, then he'll say, this is how much service you'll get. Oh, well, we want more service than that, so maybe we're willing to pay $20 a head. So that's what this does. It allows the communities that are member municipalities to create their budget and then get the services. And they will also talk about how the services are going to be provided. Does it mean he's going to have an outpost in Jamaica? I don't know. That's something for the sheriff and the towns to decide. But so this is very limited. This is a very, very, very limited pilot. We have had people who wanted us, as we heard here tonight, need to address the county tax issue, the property tax issue, the county structure. There's a lot of issues out there that need to be solved, but this isn't looking at solving them. All this is doing is allowing member towns that choose to participate, to have a mechanism to pay for the sheriff's law enforcement in their towns. That's what this does. We already pay, we pay through our taxes. And it also, what it does is it allows the towns, it allows some of those questions to be asked and answered. That's what a pilot is for. A pilot is meant to ask those questions and say, how does this work? How does this work? Should we do it this way? Should we do it this way? And that's what a pilot is meant to do. So this is a 5-year pilot. And in 5 years, if it doesn't work, as you pointed out, it's dead. And if it does work, then there will be another piece of legislation that establishes it as a permanent structure, if that's what the towns want. And it will answer questions that it could possibly be replicated across the state in other counties. There are other counties who really would like to do something like this right now, but they haven't done the groundwork. Sheriff Anderson has been doing this groundwork for, well, I haven't been in the Senate now for 4 years, and he was doing it before that. So he's been doing the groundwork with the towns for about 4.5 or 5 years. So that's, I would say this is, allow the towns that want to participate in this to participate in this. And it doesn't impact any other towns. And it doesn't solve any of the issues around property tax or county structure or anything else at all. It just gives our small towns law enforcement.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Are things that out of control with these small towns that they need more police protection?
Define out of control.
Breaking and entering, speeding, robbing, whatever it may
Let me
be.
answer the question first from our tour. When we had our tour, we met with one town. It was up north, but it was still a small town. And we're sitting there, and the select board is sitting here, and right down at the other end is sitting the lieutenant from the state barracks. And the select board said, we don't need law enforcement. We have a nice, quiet little town. Everybody behaves. And the barracks, the guy from the state barracks, looked at him and said, "Do you know how many calls we've had for domestics this year? Do you know how many calls we've had for break-ins?" I think that they don't know. It isn't out of control, but they do need some help, and they do need. I'll let Mark answer, but that was.
Well, I think we used to count on the state police also to intervene, because we used to have state police that were living in communities, outside of that.
Right, but they shouldn't be doing that just because they live in a community. That is the state police. You don't want to get me started on.
So let me start with the status of where we're at. Some of these numbers are a couple years old, but we're in the ballpark. There are about 1,600 certified law enforcement officers in the state of Vermont. That is people such as myself who come to work all the time, do this as our regular. That is people who come in 3 times a year and do traffic control for parades. So 1,600 total. There's about 10,500 square miles in the state of Vermont. In Windham County alone, we're talking about 43 square miles per law enforcement officer. That's the Windham County law enforcement officers, including Wilmington, Dover, Bellows Falls, my agency, and the state police. That's all of us. There's about 43 square miles per officer. Now, obviously, the Wilmington Police Department isn't responsible. Dover Police Department isn't responsible outside of the town. When we start looking at all the different statistics, the amount of cops that we have and the square miles we have per cop, you would just bat an eye. And so when people are saying we needed the police, now we have domestic assault, we have a sexual assault, we have a break-in, we have a thing. They'll be there in an hour. So is it out of control? I think it's status quo. I hear a lot of people say, we just don't bother calling, we take care of our own problem. State police have been reporting that they've been seeing homicides increase more than they've ever seen in the past few years. So is that a sign of people taking it into their own hands? I don't know. I'm not here to fearmonger you and say like, oh my God, we have a crazy crime spree. It's not my style. But what I will say is people are fed up with not having access to the services we provide. They're fed up with taxes. And so that's kind of a hard thing to say. We want the thing, we can't afford the thing. That opens up a lot of other doors to what other things are we paying for? And so could we do those things? Which then we start to get into all the reasons why I'm here to talk to you about a very limited pilot project that only deals with this one thing within the means that we currently have to do the thing. You're paying $300 or $600, or whatever that number is per capita. I mean, right now, my towns are paying about $30 per person. It's not a lot. And that's not equitable to Wilmington, but we're not asking for equity to Wilmington. They're asking for at least a structure that works a little better for them. So when the car crash happens in Marlborough, but we're parked in Halifax, we just leave Halifax. We're not saying I have a business relationship with the town of Halifax and we're going to take care of that.
So, Mr. Chair, I would say, one of the things I would say is that I don't know how much crime there is in my small towns, but the small towns themselves are saying, we want to enter into this kind of an agreement. It's their decision. Okay. They're the ones that they're the ones that are going to be served by it, and they're the ones that are asking for it.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
So Jeanette, it was in the paper.
We need a microphone clip.
Oh.
You're live.
I'm not sure this is accurate, but as printed, it's a Jeanette White endorsed the initiative. She said amending state law to enable the pilot program is a relatively small task. So by that I understand is the county does not have the authority to levy a property tax for the purpose of funding what Mark is trying to do. That's a vehicle that had to be approved. Now, if I can continue. It says, as White described it, the pilot program requires an amendment to carve out permission for Windham County to raise taxes for law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay. Does that sunset with this measure?
Yes.
That tweaking of the legislation?
Yes, yes. So what this bill does, what was needed in order for this pilot to take place, and for those small towns to be able to have the arrangement with the sheriff, is two things. It needed to allow for a governance structure to be set up, which is what the board that's made up of the select board members would do. And it needed to allow the county to tax for law enforcement. Currently, it does not. So right now, when I pay my property tax for Mark's services, I pay it through the town. It isn't through the county. But yes, it's a town. It's in the town budget. This would be in the town budget, but it would also come through the county. And that's where you have kind of this smoothing effect, is that a Dummerston resident would be, if they participate, a Dummerston resident would be paying the same amount as I'm paying as a Putney resident, instead of me paying a boatload and them paying almost nothing. So yes, and if this pilot doesn't work, that goes away at the end of the 5 years. The county would no longer have the ability to tax for law enforcement. Yes. Was that your question?
Yes, that's the part that scared me, that the state would relinquish that. Once the county had that, and things like Wyndham Regional had the opportunity to be able to raise taxes to fund their development, that's where it gets murky.
But if you look at this, if you look at the bill clearly states what it can do, and the entire thing sunsets in, I think it's 2034.
Yeah, about 8 years.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a typo. It is a 5-year project, and we're still working on draft versions of the bill. So my intention is a 5-year project.
I think when he did the drafter put a question mark behind the 2034. I'm sorry.
Got one more person to speak.
Are you talking to me?
You.
Oh,
Want to drag a chair up?
I have read this bill a couple of times now, and no, it's okay. This is just quick, but I do believe, and this is from the language that's actually in the bill itself, the county does not have new taxing authority. The county tax, let me see what I'm understanding from the bill. The county expenditures at the county level for this new project will simply be added to what the side judges now are responsible to bringing back to. And the categories, it'll be a separate category in that now. They're creating a new category, but they're not giving counties direct taxing authority in this bill.
So let me explain a layman's version, because that's how we started with the attorneys. And
I think I'm a layman too. I read a bill.
And I think
I've been on GovOps, and I was on appropriations, and I think I got a pretty good understanding of this.
And I think you have it. The way that we're trying to lay it out is basically to say,
We can't talk about county getting new taxing authority because this bill does not do that.
it doesn't do that. We're not doing that. So what the purpose of this governing council is to say, this is the services we want, and here you go, county. The county is just doing a technical administrative service to pass this through, so that we don't have to create new structures around accounting, new structures around audits, new structures around management of funds, bank accounts, all the minutia that goes into running a government for something that is going to disappear in 5 years. It didn't make sense to set up a regional governing council that then needs its own attorney, its own relationships with a CPA. It needs to enter into engagements with something like. All of this is just stuff that expands. So the goal of this, again, being, can we do this in a simple way that helps us answer a whole host of questions and solve a whole host of problems, and get rid of this for-profit business relationship that I currently am forced to operate a law enforcement service with. Now, the other thing Cliff, you say that's the thing that scares you. So this is in session law. It's not granting new taxing authority to the county, but it is permitting these funds to be raised in this mechanism. So that exists, but it all sunsets because, again, this is part of session law. We've actually been running 2 pilot projects in Windham County that have not been changing a nickel of Wilmington's cost. Part of the reason why we're coming at it with this is because we've seen some of the failures that are expected and anticipated with contracts, but some of the failures when we try to use the contract model. We've talked to attorneys, we've talked to people who say, is there a better way? And the better way has been to change the law. So we are doing it. It hasn't cost you anything further that we ever got to meet before today and talk before this weekend, but that I'm aware of. But at the end of the day, we are very sensitive to the issues that you bring, and we don't intend to raise your taxes with this bill. And if we were to intend to raise your taxes in a future bill, we'll be talking about how do we do it in a way that doesn't offend, because this is looking at just right now, but also what are the next 10 years? What are we setting up the next generation with? But we don't get to answer those.
So could I just answer? Look, I think that one of the things that should set you at ease a little bit, I hope, is that it is in session law. It isn't in the green books. So at that point in time, the session law just goes away and it goes back to whatever it is today.
And see, the best safeguard is not to approve it at all. Okay.
What do you mean?
For us,
Why?
we are very paranoid about additional property tax. And that's the bottom line. No matter what we say, 10 years down the road, we don't know what they're going to change. The legislature changes rather frequently. And they're very quick at raising our money or taking our money from us.
That is true.
I'm not going to be real worried 10 years from now, but instead, people here in Wilmington certainly would be. But anyway, I just throw that out. I'm sorry. Parker, go ahead.
No problem. I'm just curious how many towns are needed to make this viable till either all the members, you're down to 1 or you hit your sunset.
Yeah, so I said earlier, I represent the expense side of the column. If we talk about the service just broadly, not trying to sell anything to anyone, we cost money. We have to buy cars, we have to pay people to work, we have to pay for insurances, we have to buy equipment. Like, we cost money.
I'm just curious how many towns would that take to make your budget from what you know now?
Yep.
How many towns would that take?
So that could be one town that says they want to raise for the current services we provide. They want to raise about $725,000, which is what we currently raise from towns that are currently participating in the contract model. We anticipate towns are going to level fund what they've been doing, because that's what we've been doing for years. Sometimes we'll increase the number of hours that they want, which then does increase their budget. Sometimes we're good with the amount of money we're spending. We don't want to increase the hours. Because I'm not obligated to provide law enforcement by law, I need one town to pay me for 1 hour, and we satisfy our accomplishment if we entered into a contract for that. It's a pretty good spot to be when you're the government that doesn't have an obligation to do the thing, to say we're capable, we just don't have to. So what's the number? It could be 1. But what we're trying to do in this bill, it would be a minimum of 5. We would want them geographically located near each other. So examples of this would be like Putney, Westminster, who currently work together, Jamaica and Londonderry, who currently work together, Newfane, who's exploring conversations with Jamaica, Londonderry, and Townsend. We're looking at towns who are geographically located together to do this the right way. And the reason to do it that way, the travel time to go from Londonderry to Guilford is so significant that it starts to become pointless. So there's reasons, if it were to be Londonderry and Guilford who said, we're in, and nobody else, we'd say, well, we screwed something up along the way. Let's not start the pilot project that I'm spending my time on. But I think Cliff made a mention like, hey, this might make things easier for me. It will make things easier for me. What would also be really easy for me is to not do this process at all. I'm still willing to, because I still believe this is the right thing for our people. Mr. Chair, you say the safest thing, you're paranoid about property tax? Be paranoid. Winston Churchill said, you can take change by the hand or it will take you by the throat. I suspect the town of Wilmington will be taken by the throat if it's not proactive towards things in its interest. And I'm not here to say that the select board is not operating in the town of Wilmington's interest. What I am saying is if we want to sit here and say we're going to do nothing because that's the safest thing, okay, and that's your position. I don't need the town of Wilmington support. I'd prefer to have it. But I also come here because I want to have open lines of communication, say this won't impact you. This was not designed to solve a single problem for the town of Wilmington. So the town of Wilmington could come forward and say, we oppose this. Here are the reasons we oppose it. Here are the things. That's okay. You're not going to have me upset at you. I'm not going to lose an ounce of sleep. Like, that's okay. Cliff has shared a lot of things with me that I said, never would have thought of that. And maybe if we ever had to pivot the conversation to one of these other funding mechanisms, well, now we're thinking about those things. That was the beauty of the public process of all of this. So what we're really trying to target is how do we have the most input? We were intentional on having multiple public meetings. We knew we were not going to get everyone. We knew we were going to end up in meetings just like this. I just thought it was going to be in one of the towns I contract with, not in Wilmington, Brattleboro, Bellows Falls, or Dover. But I'm okay with that too, because you are part of my community. We do work with your police department in limited ways, but in ways that we all are good with. We share resources. If someone in Wilmington needs help, my deputies will come help. But it also might mean I have to go meet with another select board to say, this is why you didn't get the service we said you would do. And they might say, we're mad at you and we're going to end our contract. And then we say, okay, and away it goes. And that happens.
Okay.
So could I just respond to your question there? I think that after it's formed and if it's working and the towns are happy with it. If it isn't working and towns start dropping out, my guess is that the board that's made up will just abandon.
The commission.
Well, it's called, in there, I think it's called a council, whatever it's called, will just disband it.
And that's
So,
part of the sunset language.
yeah.
We're even intentional not picking a name because we pick a name for what this body would be called. And it means 13 other things for funding mechanisms. And we're like, we're not even trying to suggest that.
Yeah.
We're trying to solve these other problems. So I would love to have the town of Wilmington support. I'd love to have Cliff support. I would also love if you have feedback or input to this project to tell me what it is, because we don't want to offend. In fact, the prior regionalization projects that have been attempted in the state going back to the late 60s, but as recent as 2 years ago, failed because they offended. That's the common thread I found in every study. Someone got mad about something and it fell apart when no one could reconcile. So how do I make you not mad? I don't charge you on the grand list. I know that.
And give us a rebate. How's that?
Well, if I give you the rebate, it might not be fair to Cliff. But
All right,
You're not gonna get charged in the first place, so there's not gonna be a rebate because you're not gonna be charged.
well, I'm saying that basically with tongue in cheek and saying famous last words. Okay, so we come up with the pilot program after 5 years, it's gonna have to be a way to finance this. in the
Finance
future.
what?
Finance whatever system you have set in place.
Then the towns would go back to contracting with the sheriff, just as they do right now if they want law enforcement.
this
Sunsets-
doesn't take away any of the contractual obligations or powers the sheriff has, which is helpful, actually.
If we're talking about a very, very limited 5-year pilot project that only involves towns who want to participate in it. And they're the only ones who would pay for it. And they're the ones that would make the decisions because they're the board or the commission or the council or whatever it's called. That's all we're talking about. It's not going to impact other people. And if it doesn't work, if for some reason, and I don't know what that would be, if it doesn't work, then it goes away because it's just in session law. Nothing happens. And it goes right back to where we are right now. If Putney wants to have law enforcement, it'll contract with the sheriff, just like it does right now. That's what we would go back to. There is nothing to dissolve or anything. If it doesn't work, it's just over.
Can I ask a question, please? Is there any possible mechanism in what you guys want to do that would require the town of Wilmington to join?
No,
Anything at all?
no.
Can't be added in 5 years later, the committee of whatever it's called says, we want every
No.
town in the county
No.
to be involved.
I stand corrected. There's one mechanism, which is
What's
your
that?
board votes to do it because you'd rather do
But
that.
nothing beyond this
No.
board could require us to participate.
No,
Thank you.
it's very clear in the bill.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a couple of questions?
Sure, go ahead.
So currently, municipalities are the political subdivisions of the state. Does this create a new subdivision?
The sheriff's also a subdivision of the state because we are a constitutional office. So does it create a new subdivision? No.
No.
Are we an existing subdivision? Yes. Are we an odd one? Yes. So for the sake of simplicity, we're leaving the minutia of all of that question out, except to say we have a legal standing.
It does not create a new municipality. I mean, we have tons of municipalities beyond just what we think of as towns.
Right.
This does not create a new one.
It's actually an example of the Central Vermont Public Safety's service or something like that created a municipality for a regionalization initiative. It's one of the systems that failed. There's the Chittenden County Regional Dispatch Project. They were working to create or did create a municipal district. So
you're talking about either intermunicipal or interlocal agreements is what you're talking about.
Some of those, yes, and some of those, no. And so
by statute, those are available.
They are available and they're generally not used. And that comes back to liability that towns would incur from that. So your insurance company doesn't like it.
And the League of Cities and Towns has suggested that this is the best model for the towns rather than any of
But are we expanding? I mean, it sounds like we're expanding into a county government.
No.
We are not. So there's a separate bill. And so I heard former Rep. Manwaring talk about like the county, or I'm sorry, taxes, property taxes being regressive. I hear you. This isn't the bill to solve that, just like it's not the bill to solve a bunch of other things. There is a bill right now, I shouldn't say a bill, there's a committee right now for regional and county government. That's an existing thing that's primarily talking about flooding. This isn't a bill to solve that either. What this is looking to do is some very narrow specific things, but expand county government, it does not.
But what you're asking, so you're asking 5 towns to essentially join up. Are you asking for how long? I don't recall when I read this. How long a period must they sign up for?
It would be the term of the pilot unless they decided to exit. They're allowed to exit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand how that would be different than what you can do now.
It comes back to how Title IX works and the contracting provisions under Title IX.
Well, it's very different than what they do now, because what they do now is each town individually contracts with the sheriff and pays for it. What they would be doing there is the towns would form a board or a council that would work with the sheriff to develop a budget, and then it would serve all those towns that are part of it. So it's very different. It isn't the individual town having a contract with the sheriff. It's those towns as a group working with the sheriff on his budget and on his service.
No, I understand. That's fine. I understand.
Can I ask a question from online?
Any questions?
Sure. Who's that?
It's Todd Davidson, Dummerston Select Board.
I can't hear that.
Hang on just a minute. Hold on just a minute, Todd.
Sure.
No, go ahead, introduce yourself again.
Yeah, I'm Todd Davidson. I'm chair of the Dummerston Select Board. So I just have really kind of a statement and one question for the sheriff. So I think as drafted, I think it needs to be clear if everybody walks out here and the questions have come up, which is if you don't vote in on this, it costs you nothing. No change to your town, no change to your taxes, no anything. So I know we started out with, we're going to pay in and people are going to get money back, but that's not as it's written now. So I think it should be clear, as asked by the chair of the board, if you don't want to be in it, you don't be in it, you don't cost anything. The second question I have is section 8, which basically says, if you choose not to join the group, we'll call it, you're free to contract with other law enforcement for your services. So let's just say Dummerston chose not to join. Would we just contract with you the same as we do now?
So that's actually a question we've been navigating, Todd. We don't have a definitive answer. What I've committed to is we're not going to leave towns without anything, but then it is navigating basically the same conversation we've had with our regionalized animal control program, which for those in the room, that's what I referenced. We're doing it through a contract model. Dummerston is a member of the contract model. So I'm going to defer to some of the conversations the town of Dummerston has been a part of to simply answer the question and say, we would look to handle it probably in similar ways, but we want to be supportive to towns. We're not trying to take away public safety services from anyone who wants it. We're trying to improve structures.
Thanks.
Right, anyone else? We've concluded our evening here. We thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
And you know, Jen, it is nice to see you, believe it or not, it really is. Huh?
And you know, I
You
never,
never vote our way, but we appreciate
but I
it.
don't, I've never represented Wilmington.
That's the problem.
Yes, I never.
That's the problem. That's
Wilmington
why
was-
Rob Plunkett's here from.
Yeah, Wilmington was never in my district.
I think
Sorry.
many years ago, how many years were you in the Senate?
20.
20, okay, so
And
it
I've
was
been
some
out
years
for four.
before that, maybe when Ray Ford was here. Our rep, we did have representation at one time from Brattleboro, at one time.
Well,
But-
I think it switched in the 2000 census. So when I came in 2003, Wilmington was in Bennington,
Okay. All right.
right before.
I don't think we ever met, I don't think
was-
we ever had the senators from Brattleboro or whatever come over.
I would have represented you well.
Would you like to adjourn?
Okay, hey, gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Nobody's ever opposed to that. Taxes. Oh, down the bottom of the stairs. You want that?